dizzy. Raven was a little confused by the high fever. He tried hard to maintain his sanity, but his mind was more of a mess. What comes into view is the mountain, forest, and riverside at sunset, and the river water rushing down from the mountain keeps scouring the pebbles on the shore. The river and a dirt road mixed with smoothed cobblestones straightly divides the dense mountain forest into two halves. Looking down the mountain, at the end of the road is a splendid giant city sitting on the top of the mountain. The City of Gold. The City of Gold is exactly the same as the novice area of the game. Seeing this scene, Raven was a little stunned last night. He was still a top player fighting in the hyper-realistic game Ultron world. He clearly remembered that the last scene he saw was under the jet-black sky, the wind was howling, and countless undead were pouring out from the kingdom of the gods of the Lich god Velsharun, in units of 10,000 the army of skeletons, the corpse witches surrounded by the sea of corpses, the bone dragons and bone griffins whizzing through the sky. The undead army is boundless, like a tide that can dye the whole world white. Their target is only one Raven, who was betrayed by his boss, Sirik, the of murder. I don't remember how many bones were broken, but in the end, the disintegration rays, which were denser than the rainstorm, flooded the sky and drowned Raven, who had no way to escape. After the light that was enough to burn out the retina just by seeing the peripheral light, the world became pitch black. In Raven's vision, when he had the last chance to be reincarnated, what he saw when he opened his eyes should be this scene: a wasteland without any life, grey-black rock fangs crisscrossed in the wasteland, and corpses were scattered in the distance. Countless blue-colored ghost fires floated across the silent battlefield. In the center of the field of vision, there will be two light screens playing a wonderful review of his short life in the game. Then you will see the skeleton face of the ancient Death Jaeger in the game. Jurgil is the steward of the King of the Dead, the fatalistic deity who records the final fate of all the souls of the dead. He never got angry, always maintained his usual indifference and excesses of etiquette. He spoke in a tone that sounded like a chilling echo in a long-forgotten tomb. The only thing that the King of the End of all things cares about and strives for is to record the fate of the entire world in a regular and orderly manner, just as the world is slowly sinking to death. In the end, it was Jacob who proposed several options for reincarnation. The imaginary scene did not appear in Raven's eyes. What he saw was the City of Gold that was supposed to be destroyed by a volcanic eruption in 1318 of the Ultron calendar. Raven subconsciously wanted to get up, but suddenly a clear and incomparably weak feeling came from his body. Raven was stunned. Wait. Am I really still in the game? Even though the game Ultron World claims to be the most highly realistic synchronous game of consciousness in human history, there are still many places in it where you can see at a glance that you are actually in the game. For example, there are only a few monotonous waves in the river. For example, the trees in the game actually only have more than 50 shapes. For example, various negative states cause at most only visual haze and heavy body. For example, in early spring, wetness is only monotonous water vapor without the smell of growth. But what is Raven seeing now? The waves of the river that are changing all the time. There is no cobblestone of the same shape. The branches swaying naturally by the wind and the rotten wound on his left hand has attracted flies. All of this was too real, and instead made Raven feel like he was in a hallucination. Raven hoped that the illusion would be shattered when he closed his eyes, and when he opened his eyes again, he suddenly found himself back in the cozy doghouse at home. The hallucination did not disappear. It should be said that the imaginings in his mind are the real hallucinations. At this moment, he was lying quietly by the river, letting the water beat his lower body, and a strong tingling sensation came from his left flank and back. Raven couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and then he felt it carefully. The back should only be a flesh wound and not in the way. But the left rib. Raven subconsciously propped up his right arm, turned over and touched his left rib. A burst of heart-wrenching pain interrupted his movements, and he managed to hold back his screams. The trouble is big. The rich experience in the game makes Raven know that his rib is fractured, and the broken rib has also inserted a small section into the lung. Raven was very sure that he had internal bleeding, and what was worse was that the internal bleeding started to accumulate in his left lung, and he would die sooner or later if he didn't care. No, it should be said that it is a miracle in itself to be alive until now. Gu the flat stomach made an unsatisfactory protest sound at this time. There were also bursts of high heat coming from his forehead. Well, mortally wounded, hungry, feverish. It turns out that so many things are all his. Raywen pressed his right hand to his left rib cage, groped for the broken bone, gritted his teeth, and with the heart-piercing pain, Raywen snapped the broken bone back to its original position. There would have been an incomparably shrill scream, and the blood gushing out of his lungs chokes his throat. He coughed a few mouthfuls of blood all at once, and his breathing became a little more normal. Internal bleeding can't be ignored, otherwise, it will still be death. Raven began to concentrate his consciousness into his body. Consciously slow your breathing and feel every pulsation of blood in your body as your heart beats. Slowly spread the perception from the heart to the vicinity of the lungs, and then keep meditating in the mind to tighten the muscles in that vicinity, compress all the blood vessels in the vicinity, force the blood vessels to seal there, and let the blood vessels there. The blood starts to clot, thus stopping the internal bleeding. This is a legendary skill that is very famous and difficult to practice in the game self-stabilization. With a high concentration of will, Raven succeeded. Also because of the high concentration of consciousness, he ignored a small voice. The injury has finally stabilized, and the next step is to heal the injury as soon as possible, otherwise the injury will not last long even if it does not worsen. Now Raven finally has a little time to think. Why am I here? Did I get the game system upgrade when I hung up? This kind of reincarnation is too bad, isn't it? Didn't the game company swear that reincarnation is only one level lower at most? Before I hung up for the first time, I was a 109 level Shadow Master, and before the second time I hung up, I was a God-level assassin of level 118 who took up the role of God's Fang. The game is based on the total number of occupation levels, and every 20 levels is a level, from low to high. It is Black Iron, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Legend, and the Holy level that is considered to be a god. Why are both of my characters both holy? Reincarnated as a legendary powerhouse, no matter how bad it is, you should have a bronze body and be immune to illness and fever. This low-level negative state. How can you be reincarnated into an unemployed level 0 kid in the small village of Eris next to the city of gold? Raven muttered to himself in his heart. When he speaks of Eris, he unconsciously repeats the name over and over again. Right. I remembered. His name is Raven, a 15-year-old half-elf boy with pointed ears. He has been living in the small village of Eris with his father Robert and his 13-year-old sister Karen since he can remember. They are the home of farmers and hunters. Although I always felt that he looked completely different from his father and sister, this did not affect the harmony of the family at all. The night before yesterday, a sudden goblin army destroyed the entire village, and my father's life and death were unknown. The survivors who survived in the village hid in the only church in the village and waited for rescue. A day passed, and the rescue was nowhere to be seen. What we waited for last night was another attack by the goblins. The church fell in the middle of the night. The scattered villagers fled their homes and headed for the safe place in their hearts, the city of gold. In the process of escaping from the goblins, Raven and Karen jumped into the icy river. Raven lost consciousness in the water, and it was Karen desperately pulling Raven to fight against the rapids to save Raven back. Without Karen, there would be no Raven today. Do not. And many more. That Raven was actually dead in the water, and what Karen rescued was his body. I am Raven. An ordinary Chinese young man. The surname is Lei Mingwen, not the Western name Raven. No. Both Ravens are you. A magical voice in his heart said to him. Two completely different lives, two irrelevant memories. At this moment, it was like putting white milk and dark chocolate in a blender, and after a humming, they overlapped. They all lost their color, no more white, no more black, just a mixed brown. I really want to look up to the sky and curse, it's absurd. She never scolded, and scolding anything would be of no avail. From another memory, Raven finally figured out what had happened. He had crossed over. A death in the game made his soul travel to this world exactly like the game Ultron world. To be precise, he entered this frail body that was frightened, injured, and had a fever, and at the same time merged with the soul of the deceased Raven. Raven's brain was still very confused, and the pain was terrible. He clenched his fist with the greatest strength, and could feel the nails piercing his palm, which still didn't help relieve the pain in his brain. He could clearly feel the deceased's fascination with life, his reluctance to his sister Karin, his hopes for the future, and his desire to become stronger. What made Raven overwhelmed was that these feelings had now become his. The chaos in my mind began to cool down. Raven, the high game player in that game, is me. The young Raven living in the Ultron world at the moment is also me. Raven began to accept the reality. He was an orphan in Huaxia. He had no friends and no worries. He played games and waited for graduation when he was unemployed. Seriously, no nostalgia. If you give him another choice, it is estimated that he will choose to travel directly into the game world. Hey? Suddenly, a thought was like lightning that pierced through the dark night, splitting the fog in Raven's mind. According to the memory of the deceased Raven, it is now March in the year of sunset, March 1314 of the Ultron calendar, which is the date when the game just opened. For the 4 years from 1314 to 1318, the game is officially called the First Era, and the common name in the players' mouths is the Year of Turmoil. And the history in the game has been written to, 4th age 5 years. If the development of this world follows strictly the history of the game, the Year of Turmoil begins 4 years later, followed by the Year of Shattering that lasts 3 years, then the 2 years of the Year of Voyage, and finally the Year of War in the New World. An uncontrollable excitement and ecstasy spread into every corner of Raven's body. If everything is true, then in the next 10 years, Raven will become even more prophetic than a prophet, and even more magical than a magician. Lei Wen, who had the personal expertise of Bao Wenqiangji in the game, clearly remembers every process in the game. At the same time, as a transmigrator, no one knows what will happen better than him. From now on, there are still 4 years and 2 months before the era of destruction. The thrones of the gods have fallen from the kingdom of heaven to the mortal world one after another, and the gods who were once aloof will turn into saints of the sanctuary level and walk on the earth, seeking to establish the kingdom of gods on earth. Then in another 3 years, the entire Ultron continent will collapse due to the disappearance of the Supreme AO and the withering of the branches of the world tree that supports the Ultron world. All the half-planes attached to the main plane of the Ultron continent will suffer. Including heaven, hell, endless abyss, and various elemental planes, etc. The only way to survive is to unearth the floating stones hidden in the Ultron continent, build a floating continent that can accommodate the kingdom of God with divine power, move the believers and the most valuable things up, and follow the guidance of the Mother River of the Stars. Travel the plains and find another stem of the world tree. Lei Wen clearly remembered that there were only 36 floating continents that successfully sailed, and only 12 floating continents finally arrived in another world. The exhausted gods and their people had to face the death of defending their homeland. Another line of gods. Wen was in a trance for a while. In his last life, he was a good player, but he was still a long way from the top players who were ahead step by step. It is because the upgrade is too slow, the savings are too small, and the opportunity to ignite the fire alone is missed, otherwise he will not fall twice. Now that this life has penetrated into the world of Ultron, and there are no longer 2 chances of resurrection, do you still have to do nothing in this life? This is worthy of his second life in the true sense? There are thousands of thoughts in my heart, but in reality, this second life seems to be dying. To make matters worse, Raven inadvertently recalled the clips from last night and the night he was attacked, and he suddenly discovered a major problem that seemed like a nightmare. Taking a deep breath, Raven shook Karan from the coma and shouted, "Wake up! Hurry up! You can't stay here!" Sister Karan was more fortunate than Raven, she just fainted and woke up under Raven's violent shaking. "Brother, what's the matter?" Raven quickly explained loudly, "It's the Limbs goblins who attacked us. They come out at night. We must leave now, or we will be attacked by the Limbs goblins again after dark." Karan was still a little confused when she saw the city of gold that was not far away. "Are we approaching the city of gold? Will the goblins come after us?" "No. This goblin is different. Aren't all goblins the same? I didn't realize that the goblins that attacked us were not pure greenskins. They were covered in black sturdy hair, they only attacked at night, and they knew how to plan to hunt us. Isn't so much evidence enough? We must leave. Immediately. Immediately." Raven said it too loudly, a little breathless. Struggling to get up, Karan failed, and the body she had just propped up fell down again. Karen's voice was full of tears, "Brother! I'm running out of strength. Maybe those hellish greenskins have given up. How can goblins have such good brains?" At this moment, even Raven himself had the thought that maybe the goblin would not come back. In the next instant, Raven extinguished his fluke. Life has no ifs. Forester goblins hunt most creatures that pass through their territory and are smaller than a horse. When food is scarce, woodbut goblins often plan and plunder the frontier areas of humanoid biomes, usually evacuating after looting a few children. But their performance last night and the night before has greatly violated this common sense. Their mad siege of people in the church was already an accident. After the village's militia captain, Arnold, desperately killed a strong goblin as the leader, they would normally start running away. They don't. This only means one thing: the leader of the Linpyo goblin team is a more senior goblin druid elder, and this is a combined force of at least 60 goblins. The harvest of the previous 2 nights was far from meeting the needs of this goblin tribe. Raven struggled to stand up straight. "I'll say it for the last time, after nightfall the goblins of the forest servants will come again. They hate the sun, so when the sun rises they will turn into a small tree or a thick branch left near the village. In the woods. Once the sun goes down, they'll come at full speed. If we don't go now, we'll be caught up to an hour after dark." Karan wanted to say something, but suddenly she saw Raven's injury, and her nose suddenly became sore. She knew that it was Raven's injury to cover her. Her body suddenly gained strength, she stood up, and in turn supported Raven. "Brother, I'll help you." Raven's body froze. Not because of Karan, but because he heard a ding sound like a dream. That is the sound of the system in the game. It was only then that Raven realized that a piece of text had entered his mind like a stamp, both now and just now. Legendary skill self-stabilization is activated, normal damage is no longer as deadly to you. If your health is negative but not yet dead, you can make a self-stabilization check. If the check is successful, you will not be stunned and can continue to act until bleeding to death or in stable condition. Your self-medication has stabilized your injury and you can continue to operate as usual. Personal feat persuader activation. Your rich common sense makes you keenly aware of the existence of danger, and you try to persuade your sister Karan to leave this dangerous place in advance. Persuader feat makes your negotiation skill +2. You succeeded in persuading Karan. Karan is now willing to follow in your footsteps. The 2 paragraphs before and after made Raven in a trance for a while. Did I really travel into the game world? Or am I actually still in the game? Suddenly he smiled bitterly. However, since there is a system beep, you should still have a system, right? Properties. I want to open the properties panel. Raven roared in his heart. The scene in the horizon suddenly stagnated. After a tenth of a second, a set of pale green data poured down in Raven's retina, forming a data panel that mixed reality and illusion. Name, Raven. Race, half-elf / Attributes, Strength 11, Agility 17, Constitution 12, Intelligence 18, Wisdom 15, Charisma 19. Alignment, Lawful Evil. Occupation, Level 2 Civilian / Level 1 Assassin, not yet employed, Black Iron rank. Health, 1/11, Fatal Injury, Fever, Hunger, Self-Stabilization is activated, the effective time is 4 hours, 7 minutes and 30 seconds, all attributes are temporarily reduced by 50%. General Experience Points, 0. Skill Points, none. Attribute Point, none. Status, Healthy. Occupational Skills Stealth 30, Disguise 24, Hide 19, Bluff 12, Sneak Attack 9, Deadly Attack 11. Legendary Skill Mad Letter Seal. Racial Skill Dark Vision. Personal Expertise Secret, Persuasive, Well Known. Personal Skill Self-Stability Legendary. After finally seeing his attributes, Raven was surprised and surprised. First of all, look at the basic attributes. All the basic attributes of ordinary adult humans are 10. Based on this calculation, this is an obvious elite template. The classic Big Road Goods start is that all attribute bases are 8, depending on which race you are or what kind of bloodline you inherit, and there are plus or minus options for individual options, and then according to your occupation, you will be given a dozen free attribute points to play with you. Ultron World has a very interesting setting. When you first enter the game, the system will scan your body and give you additional bonuses based on the data. Now it seems that the templates of the two professions of Assassin and Master of Shadows in the previous game have been comprehensively inherited in one breath. By the way, Raven's professional skill level is also much higher than that of the novice in the game. For a 14-year-old boy to have such an elite template, Raven was already very satisfied. You must know that in the game, less than 3% of people were born with a hero template with an average attribute of 20. Of course, on top of this there is the so-called Hanging Bee template, the Saint template. Anyone who owns this template will say Son of God. The descendants of the of literature also make people feel balanced. If it is the son of the of war, the son of the of death, don't look at it, it is the battle bee in the Hanging Bee. As long as the initial stage is not eliminated, that is to get on the through train of Feng Shen. The second is the occupation. According to the Ultron World game settings, the assassin should be a bronze level, second level, occupation advanced by monks or rogues. Since Raven played the most smoothly in the past life was the assassin, which led to the funny situation in the current attribute panel, the assassin who has not taken office can only be regarded as a civilian, but all the assassin skills. Although the assassin is poorly integrated and has a lot of restrictions in the later stage, as a novice profession, no one can ignore the advantage of its huge lethality. If the assassin profession is used well, it can also produce huge advantages. It's just that when the equipment in the early stage has not kept up, the shortcomings of the assassin's thin blood are obvious. Sigh and sigh, no matter how good your attributes are, you must first solve the current predicament. Brother, what's wrong with you? Realizing that Raywen was in a daze, Karin called Raywen nervously. Oh, it's all right, I just woke up and felt a little dizzy. It's all right now. Let's go. She comforted Karin and put her right hand on Karen's shoulder. The two brothers and sisters supported each other on the way to the City of Gold. The cobblestones that appear and disappear from time to time on the road have witnessed decades of ups and downs, as well as the impending tragedy. The sun in the forest always gives the impression that it is going down quickly, and the speed of the light is very fast. There is an illusion that all the light sources are suddenly lost in the dark night. Not long after nightfall, the wind blowing behind brought shrill screams from afar. The two brothers and sisters knew that they were survivors who also escaped from the village but did not have time to reach the City of Gold. Raven was right. Even if they knew, they both broke out in a cold sweat. The City of Gold is getting closer, and the brazier that never goes out at night is shining like a beacon of hope in the hearts of the Raven brothers and sisters. It's near. Close. Getting closer. You can even hear the chatter of the city gate guards. At this moment, a sound resembling the low roar of an ape and the sound of a branch breaking suddenly came from a distance behind him. Run! Raven was in a hurry, and dragged Karan in a frenzy to run. However, the voice behind him was still approaching at a high speed. Ho ho ho! Panting heavily, the breath that spewed from his lungs was like burning gasoline. For a moment, Raven thought he was a fire-breathing dragon. How far is it? Do not know. Anyway, the outline of the city gate is getting bigger and bigger. At the same time, out of the corner of his eyes, he also caught a glimpse of the dark shadow behind him jumping from tree to tree. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The site is suddenly bright, and the two of them rushed out of the forest area at some point. In front of them were the bustling crowds near the city gate, as well as the densely packed golden city guards. The back was hot, and Lei Wen could feel that it was the result of countless eyes focused on his back, and the source of the eyes could only be those god-killed forest servant goblins. No. This is how the same thing? Lin Puti is shrewd and will only give priority to killing the weakest targets. Just 2 meters in front of him, there was a refugee child from the same village. Raven recognized him as Zack, who was only 7 years old. But dozens of pairs of eyes were looking at Raven. Raven turned his head suddenly and looked at the monsters standing on the canopy of the tree. They looked at Raven with undisguised greed, fiery and regret. Do not know why? Raven had the illusion that he was on the most wanted list of Goblin Lin servant number 1. Crop the sharpshooter in the guard hit the eyeball of a forest servant goblin with one arrow, breaking his brain. The monster, which was less than 1 meter tall, fell straight down. It was only at this time that the goblins of the forest servants showed their timid side. When facing more and more powerful enemies than them, they often dispersed in a hurry. Go to hell! Monsters! Seeing the wonderful performance of the guards, the refugees started booing and screaming. Infected by this revengeful atmosphere, little Zack also raised his fist and ran to the edge of the woods to roar. No, Raven suddenly had a bad premonition. Raven's stop was a step too late. A black cast net suddenly flew out of the woods and easily covered little Zack. At the moment when no one could react, 2 black shadows jumped down from the tree and quickly took little Zack with him. The net is pulled back. Even at this moment, the 2 forest servant goblins glanced at Raven, who was 5 meters away, as if to say, "How come the idiot who walked to the edge of the woods is not you? Do not shiver from the cold." Like the sad mother, Raven couldn't do anything. He watched helplessly as little Zack was dragged to a tree and eaten by the Goblin Lin servant, tearing off pieces of meat on the spot. The guard tried to save Zack with an arrow, but the woods were too dense and dark. Missing an arrow, little Zaxton was dragged deep into the woods, and soon even the last miserable howl disappeared. The refugees fell silent, and they all kept away from the woods in fear, trying their best to keep themselves in the light of the brazier. Sister Mary from the grocery store in the village cried and asked the villagers in the same village about her husband's whereabouts. "Malak, has anyone seen my Mallow, my Mallow? Malak is Mary's husband. He was just married. He was ripped out during the church defense last night." Many people saw him being dragged by goblins to the roof opposite the church, who was already injured, screaming, and being eaten alive. No one dared to respond to Sister Mary's pressing question, and no one had the courage to tell her the truth, and there was no way to comfort a woman who had just lost her husband. The Ultron world is cruel. Humans and other civilized races are constantly competing with monsters and beasts for living space. Whenever the city could not accommodate more people or needed more food, there were always pioneers who led a group of poor people looking for hope to open up the land. A lucky person stood on his heels and became the master of one party. More like Raven and Sister Mary, who lost their homes because of the incompetence of the lords and could not resist the invasion of monsters, and were forced to return to the big city. Entering a big city doesn't mean safety, rather, it's the beginning of another dangerous journey. Karan, let's continue to conserve our stamina. Brother, we have arrived at the City of Gold. Raven replied coldly, didn't you see the sheriff's eyes? Those were the eyes that watched the fat pigs enter the slaughterhouse. A fat man with a big belly stood on the high platform and motioned the assembled refugees to be quiet. I'm Sheriff Parker. Everyone listen to me, now you are safe. There is only one rule in the Golden City, it is forbidden to gather people to make trouble, and the other rules follow all the rules. It's the same as the city. Don't worry, go in. There are many places where people are short of people. I believe the enthusiastic citizens will be happy to accept you. After the announcement, he led everyone into the city and acted as a guide. The City of Gold is indeed very beautiful. Many streets in the city are more than 2 meters above the ground with lanterns hanging like a city that never sleeps. Beside the blue stone road, which can accommodate 2 light carriages passing staggeringly, is a sidewalk with a width of 1.5 meters. The dirt road in the village is incomparable. However, following the leadership of the sheriff, the refugees came to the secondary street, which obviously leads to the slum, because there is only a lantern at the entrance of the 3 or 4 alleys here. If residents need to enter and exit at night, they need to spend 2 copper coin hired a lantern to lead the way, otherwise no one would know what happened in the dark alley. Okay, let's leave it to the lantern bearers. They'll be your best guides. The sheriff left gracefully, leaving a group of dazed people. A scar-faced lantern bearer came first. We have 8 men who live alone here who need women. Who will come? Another lantern bearer stepped forward. Boss Heath needs some smart little guys. The third one said, we need a few miners. The survivors of Eris finally understood. In the eyes of the big men in the City of Gold, these people are no different from the wild dogs on the roadside. More and more people appeared in the darkness and began to surround the survivors of Eris. No. I just want to find a serious job and rent a small house. Sister Mary screamed. But her cry attracted the attention of the men instead. A man who should be very strong hugged her, ignored her screams and struggles, and carried her back to a mud brick house not far from the alley. Soon, Mary's exclamation disappeared, replaced by the sound of heavy breathing. Karen covered her mouth in disbelief. Half an hour ago, Mary was looking for her husband like a mad woman, but now she succumbed. One person after another was picked away by semi-force. This is the reality, the City of Gold accepts refugees in a cruel and ruthless way. Those high-ranking nobles not only need more food, they also need more untouchables to maintain the luxury of the city. Raven chose to leave quickly with Karen. He could clearly sense the greed in the eyes of many people looking at his brother and sister. He knew very well what would happen to a handsome 15-year-old boy with a beautiful 13-year-old girl in the City of Gold. Even if civilians accept them for a while, gangsters will come to them in at most 2 days. They will be ambushed or fascinated or something, and when they wake up, they will most likely fall into the hands of Masina, the woman who runs all the brothels in the Golden City. Let's go. Where to go? I know there is a place to accept us safely. Raven used all his strength to run with Karen, shuttling through the streets, and after a few turns, he finally got rid of the few who were quietly following. Well-meaning guy. Raven was gasping for breath, the impact of the injury on him has not yet recovered. Now sheer will is driving his body. The City of Gold has the largest slave trading center and commodity trading center in the whole continent, and its actual controller is the Wealth Church of the Goddess of Wealth Vol'jin. On the surface, the Church of Fortune is absolutely neutral, and it even promotes religious equality. In fact, no matter which player in the game will regard the Church of Fortune as a neutral evil formation. In order to make money, there is nothing that the Church of Wealth cannot do. As long as you give money, the evil can easily preach in the City of Gold. The kind-formed churches that can't afford to pay will all go to hell. In the game, the City of Gold is the best and worst beginner zone. The best thing is that you can buy almost everything here. The worst thing is that there are the most disgusting people and disgusting things here. Many players have tried to sell them to slave camps as soon as they wake up. If Raven still dares to stay in the slum, the only thing waiting for them is a dead end. The gods in the Ultron world all have corresponding priesthoods. The priesthood is the category under the jurisdiction of the gods. The gods and the churches they belong to will only protect people in their own fields. In the City of Gold, there are only two places where the magic power of money can protect the Raven brothers and sisters. The first is the Guardian Church of Heim, the of Guardians. Unfortunately, the two Ravens have nothing to do with the Guardians, so they rejected it first. The only option left was the Smithing Guild of Gond, the of Craftsmanship and Blacksmithing. I know an old dwarf, his name is Wolfgar Wildhammer. He can be said to be our only choice. Raven said, Yu reading www.uuganshu.com recalled his previous forging skills, hoping not to be too novice, otherwise, if the old dwarf refused to accept him as an apprentice, it would be a lot of fun. According to the memory in his mind, Raven was dragging his sister Karin, who was also staggering, almost instinctively. He was seriously injured, and Karin was exhausted. Accidents always happen when you least expect them. A tall man suddenly appeared in front of them. He walked directly in front of them, pinched Karin's chin and said, "Yo, he's actually a beauty." When the words fell, Raven already knew that something was wrong, and when he saw the edged black pattern on the man's cloak, Raven's mind went blank. Black Eclipse Church? Why would you mess with this kind of guy? Just as he was about to say something, the man grinned and threw a moldy piece of brown bread in front of him. "Don't force me to do it, take this and get away from me. This little beauty will be mine from now on." The City of Gold is the coldest, most greedy and most money-oriented place in the entire Ultron continent. Commoners have no status, only a little better than slaves, and are allowed to exist purely to serve the wealthy in the City of Gold. Therefore, the behavior of the Black Eclipse believers is not only unstoppable, but a group of good people will gather around to watch the show. The weak Karin couldn't resist the brute force of the giant at all. Her weak struggle was more like a stimulus and an invitation in the eyes of the beast. Raven realized he had to make a choice. Do you want to be a coward all your life, or choose to be a hero for 3 seconds? Suddenly he smiled bitterly. Because someone saw a self who rushed forward without hesitation. If Raven was simply the top player in the game, he would definitely abandon this NPC named Karin without hesitation, because death in the game is permanent, and any player has only 3 lives, and after any one of them dies that character will never be taken back. But now Raven is a fusion of 2 souls, and in his soul memory he has spent many years with Karin. Before this moment, Raven really didn't think that "I can't control myself" would happen. Since it has happened, we must do our best. In a split second, Raven had controlled his muscles and made a left hook. Of course, this kind of clumsy boxing can't hit anyone, and the Black Eclipse cultist slapped Raven's fist with a grin. Raven castrated and bumped into him with a shoulder, like an untrained child fighting. Black Eclipse believers don't care, so how much strength can a slender body have when it hits? The Black Eclipse cultist suddenly found a sharp pain coming from his chest, and there was a dagger in his chest at some point. Elbow punch. No, this should be an elbow dagger. The Black Eclipse cultists paid the price for his carelessness, and the price was his life. Run! Raven's roar didn't seem to wake up Karin, who was still in a panic. She looked at Raven with frightened eyes. Raven soon discovered that Karin was not looking at him, but behind him. Bang! Raven only felt as if he had been hit by a galloping bull. Another Black Eclipse cultist? Where is he from? When Raven came back to his senses, only pain spread all over his body, and his weak body twitched violently due to some kind of strong stimulus. He didn't need any reminder to know that he was on the verge of death. There was chaos in his mind, and there was a fatal suffocation on his neck, and the tingling sensation that seemed to melt his brain at any time came from his stomach in waves. Raven realized that he was stuck in the neck and held high. The other party was taller than himself, and his strength must be above this body. To make matters worse, half of her sister Karen's face was covered in blood, and she fell to the ground with unknown life and death. Karen! Don't die! As soon as he gritted his teeth, Raven, the once level 118 god-level assassin, made the best response, hitting the opponent's throat with a knee. The sudden blow was beyond the opponent's imagination. A hit, but not fatal. The knee strike that exhausted Raven's strength only caused the opponent to let go because of the pain, and there was no feeling of smashing the opponent's throat as expected by Raven. Raven's black vision due to lack of oxygen has not recovered yet, and the consciousness of the god-level player has made him clear that the opponent's body is too strong. This means that the fortitude saving throw, which represents the strength of the opponent's body, is too high, and it is impossible for him to deal effective damage to the opponent in hand-to-hand combat. Can't beat it. That guy's level is likely to be much higher than Raven. In other words, the opponent's challenge level is too high. It is conceivable that the opponent's name must be red and purple in the game, and it must be a bunch of red question marks in the past. Vision restored. Raven, who fell to the ground ruthlessly, was still spinning around in spite of himself. His eyes were spinning quickly, looking for his own lifeline in his vision. Found it. 3 consecutive tumblings without aesthetics, grabbed Karen and avoided the counter copy from the opponent's big hand. The superior agility caused Raven to shove Karen into a sewer opening on the edge of the bluestone pavement, and Raven's thin body followed suit. The surrounding light suddenly disappeared, and Raven entered a cold and dark world. Breathing gently, the damp and corrupt air filled Raven's lungs, which might be unbearable for ordinary people, but Raven, who was accustomed to walking in the dark, felt relieved. When the huge forward momentum caused the two of Raven to roll in the sewer a few times, a rude man roared from the back of his head, "Little brat! I'm going to tear you apart!" Raven smiled. The sewer entrance is not too narrow, nor can it be said to be wide. With just a glance, Raven knew that the burly man would never get in. A few seconds later, the man's wanton laughter came from outside the sewers. "Little bastard, you still want to live after being hit by my corrosive teeth? You and that little rot in the ditch." Ha 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 ha. Raven's first reaction was to curse in his heart, "Don't let me survive. Otherwise, I'll kill you first." Cursing in his heart, Raven's mood could never be better. Corrosive Fang is a rare magic skill that players can encounter in the novice area in the Ultron world. A total of 36 points of damage in 3 hours can easily kill a novice 3 times. Divine arts are not Chinese cabbage. If you use them indiscriminately, you will be punished by gods. Is it worth using magic to deal with a commoner kid? How unlucky do you have to be to get hit by this thing? What happened? Nemas, if I were still that shadow master or god-level assassin, it would be like playing with one hand to torture your ancestors for the 18th generation. In the novice area, a corrosive teeth was fired. If this happened to someone else, Raven would laugh 3 times and pat the guy on the shoulder. "Congratulations on winning the lottery, early death, hurry up and buy a lottery ticket." It happened to him. Raven just wanted to say, "I have nothing to say except foul language." After the successful crossing, the body is his, and the fatal injury is naturally his, so he has to find a way to save himself. When he didn't pay attention just now, he had already performed self-stabilization again, and the system showed that his HP was already 2/11. Corrosive Tooth deducts 1 HP every 10 minutes, which means that Raven also has to make a self-stability check every 10 minutes. When the massive bleeding in the lungs and the corrosion damage of the stomach come together, this should be the so-called dead to die. Shaking his head to shake those unlucky futures out of his head, Raven gasped heavily, dragging Karen's thin body with one hand, wading hard in the sewage. "Are we going to die?" Karen asked a little confusedly. "No. Brother, I'll take you to a place where you can be rescued." Saying so, the situation is not optimistic at all. After seriously recalling the information about the corrosive fang, Raven knew clearly that the novice who was hit by this thing had only two results. One is to write a suicide note to prepare for the funeral. If you want to treat such an injury, you must at least buy the number 7 life elixir produced by the goddess of life. The cheapest thing is not less than 5 gold coins, which is not suitable for a novice. Possible tasks. The second is to gamble on life, which is a wonderful life-saving magic weapon accidentally discovered by players in the early stage of the game. Saranda Orim, the bishop of the Holy Coin of the City of Gold Fortune Church and the spokesperson of the goddess, has a series of extravagant practices under her leadership, because the holy water of life has the effect of purifying and improving cell activity. The Temple of Wealth has long abused the holy water of life. For example, use the low-level life holy water as a detergent to clean the temple, and use it as a laundry detergent to wash the priest's robes. In particular, Baristatheriers, one of the 5 shrews under Orim's subordinates, used the holy water of life to apply a mask at least once a night in order to maintain her youth and beauty. When players suffer continuous damage that they can't handle, they will run to the sewers, follow the secret escape route that a player accidentally found, and drill into a utility room in the outer courtyard of the Church of Fortune. There will be servants from time to place the holy water bottle of life. If you are lucky enough to steal a bottle or 2 of the holy water of life, then you don't have to die. In the game Ultron World, the severity of the death penalty has caused players to protest countless times, because the character disappears permanently after one death, and the only option is to lower the occupation level of 20 and rebuild a character for reincarnation. The current Raven didn't say that he would cut off his reincarnation, he would die if he died, not to mention that he was still dragging a lowly. With no choice, Raven took Karin and groped for the past according to the route he remembered. The place has been found. It was an ordinary-looking sewer wall with 2 small holes hung with cobwebs. After Raven poked in with his fingers at the same time, he squeaked, but the wall in his sight did not change. "Brother, this a place where miracles may happen. Come on." Raven picked up Karen's hand and pressed one hand against the wall. The wall didn't seem to exist, and the 2 of them easily passed through it. "What? This is the legendary Phantom Wall." Raven's smile gave Karen confidence. Karen secretly felt that Raven should know what was behind the Phantom Wall. "Come." Holding Karen, Raven passed through the Phantom Wall, and what appeared in front of him was a wide passage with nothing in it, leading straight to a deeper place. After entering the tunnel, I felt a lot drier. The 2 helped each other to the end of the secret passage, but Raven did not dare to open the door of the secret passage. As soon as the door is opened, an alarm trap will be triggered, alarming the entire temple. There is a small transom next to the gate of the secret passage, just big enough for one hand to go in. Raven glanced at it, but it was still empty. "Don't make a sound, the only thing we can do is wait and pray." After Raven said lightly, he helped Karen to sit quietly at the entrance of the secret passage, waiting for fate to judge him. There was nothing Raven could do. He couldn't even find a clean bandage to wrap Karen in the secret passage. Perhaps because of excessive blood loss, Karen was a little confused, her head was tilted, and her whole body was leaning on Raven's shoulder. In the silent darkness, Raven silently recalled the details about holy water. Because the usage is variable, the holy water of life used by the servants is not fixed. Unless you are lucky, the maid put the holy water of life used by Ceres to put the mask here. Holy water. According to statistics, the holy water placed here has a 43% chance of being the lowest 10th holy water, 29% of the 9th, 18% of the 8th, 8% of the 7th, and only 2% of the 6th or above. Holy water. To deal with the tooth of corrosion, at least the elixir of life above number 7 is required. The rich experience made Raven lament silently. He knew that reading www.yuyuganshu.com. This is typical of 9 deaths. This feeling of not being able to control one's own destiny is the most annoying. Waiting for the end or new life of one's own life is undoubtedly a scary and lonely thing. The pain from corrosion was still tormenting Raywen's nerves, but Raywen didn't even dare to cover his wound. It was strong acid, and covering the wound would only put his palm in it. The pain was used wave after wave, the nails had already been pinched into the palm of the hand, and the lips were bloodied by his own teeth. It seems that since he was chased and killed by more than a dozen gods and clones that time, he has never experienced it again, right? The body can't move around casually. Vigorous exercise will intensify blood circulation and accelerate the diffusion of corrosive acid in disguised form. The sound of the system sounded again, the self-stability check failed, and the injury stabilization check is in progress. The check failed. Your injury begins to deteriorate. If you cannot return your health to a positive number within 10 minutes, you will be judged dead. With the end of the prompt sound, the eyes became blurred, and the surroundings were all hazy. Lei Wen was suddenly shocked, and within 10 minutes, before things turned around, he was about to die. There was a feeling in a trance, if I hang up, I'm afraid Karin won't be able to live either. For the first time in his life, Raven fell into despair, and he, an atheist, prayed to the goddess of luck for the first time. Perhaps this is the so-called prayer of despair. How long has it been? Raven didn't know, his consciousness was gradually blurring, and his body had already become numb due to the severe pain. After finally crossing once, I want to do as many things as the stars in the sky. For example, in this lifetime, you will personally ignite the divine fire that only belongs to you and achieve the divine position. Of course, what I want to do most is to hang and beat that bastard, Sirik, the of murder, 10,000 times. Unfortunately, if I hang here, then everything is empty talk. Even if he hadn't tried it, Raven knew that there was nothing to resurrect in this world. The of death will not let go of any soul that is in hand. Ta 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 ta. From vague to clear, footsteps came from a distance. Not long after, the sound of glassware being placed on the small table outside the transom sounded. Raven knew that this was the holy water of life he dreamed of. Peeking through the transom, the vibrant lush green is so clear even in the hazy vision. Raven swore that he would remember this color for the rest of his life. Time was running out, Raven gritted his teeth and waited for the servant to leave. The servant finally left, Raven used his last strength to grasp the fence on the transom, and greedily stretched out his trembling arms. Holy water is here. Raven, the holy water of life, has drunk many times in the game, and he has never been as eager as this time. That sweetness, that pure beauty, that grass-like aroma kept stimulating Raven's taste buds. What? Hit the jackpot. This is holy water number 5. This thing is still very useful even if it uses more than 60 gold rank. Raven sucked in big mouthfuls, like a newborn baby sucking breast milk. Not sure if the other bottles are all 5s, Raven decided to split half. Half a bottle of holy water was poured into his stomach, and Raven immediately gave the remaining half of the bottle mouth to mouth to the unconscious Karin. Soon, the first bottle bottomed out. Raven stretched out his hand and took the second bottle to follow. This bottle is also size 5. After thinking about it, Raven drank a third of it and fed the remaining third to Karin. The last holy water was smeared on Karin's face, and she could see clearly after a while. Until Karin's eyeballs that were cut off by that guy were reborn quickly. It's not just Karin, his abdomen is also wriggling violently. The divine power of the goddess of life is indulging in the acid that has entered the body. The corrupted internal organs are regrowing as they were, and the blurred vision has become clear again. At the same time, Raven could clearly feel a stench similar to rotting vegetables gushing out from the wound. Out of the instinct of a god-level assassin, Raven immediately used the glass bottle that had been filled with holy water against the wound and caught the acid. As an assassin, making drugs is a required course. I haven't figured out how to use these acids for a while, but they will always come in handy. While feeling the changes in his body, Raven looked at the bottle out of the corner of his eyes. When the divine power of the holy water completely cancelled the damage of corrosive fang, and even after the health was full, the acid was also finished. Ding! It was like a hallucination, the cute and familiar system prompt sound came. You successfully dispelled the corrosive fang of Black Eclipse cultist. You have obtained information on your personal specialty weak acid resistance. You found a special scene the extravagant gift of the goddess of wealth, get 300 general experience points. You got a new life in the dark and got information about the shadow energy tank. Raven immediately added all common experience to civilians, so Raven became a level 10 civilian, and his life limit reached 27. Then there is the shadow energy. Shadow energy is a symbol of the true entry of all thieves professionals. No matter how many skills they have learned before, they are only things in the category of ordinary people. Superhuman skills such as shadow jump, which stab behind the enemy by traversing the shadow plane, can only be used by shadow energy. In the past, Raven had survived until he was a 12th level rogue before being locked up in a dark water prison because of a crime. In the darkness, he received a prompt to turn on the shadow energy gauge. In theory, as long as the shadow energy is sufficient, all related skills can be used without restriction. When it comes to shadow energy, there is no way around Raven's former boss, Sirik, the of murder and death. According to the progress of the plot in the game, Sirik will seize the priesthood of shadow from the god of thieves in another year. The priesthood is the scope of the divine jurisdiction. If it is a game, the most convenient and practical way to activate shadow energy is to find a place to feel the existence of shadow energy, and then go to the temple of the of thieves to worship the of thieves, and then you can get skills related to shadow energy. Now Raven doesn't want to do that at all. Because the consequence of this is that all the shadow skills that Raven gets are the skills that have been simplified by the shadow priesthood. This means that once he opposes Sirik who has obtained the shadow priesthood in the future, he will never use any shadow-related skills. Think about it, the skill belongs to Sirik, and the shadow energy needed to use the skill is also from Sirik. Would people be so stupid to use his power to beat him? Then there is only one option left, leave the of thieves alone and master the use of shadow energy from the shadow plane. Only in this way can he use the shadow energy to compete with Sirik to the greatest extent. Of course, it would be even better if Sirik could not get the shadow priesthood in this world. If possible, Raven didn't want to do this to Sirik. Unfortunately, as a player, there is nothing more disgusting than having a garbage backstage boss. Sirik is a lunatic. Seeing whoever bites someone, he claims to be the only supreme god. Although he is also very strong, he is far from worthy of the word supreme. He is hostile to almost all gods, and he has never had allies. Even if he has teammates for a short time, he still takes it as his highest mission to pit teammates. The most unacceptable thing is his madness and paranoia. He sometimes even sends the exact opposite oracle to his priests, asking them to murder each other. Raven served as his best thug, and was promoted all the way to the powerhouse of the sanctuary. Even if he surrendered all the divinity and godhead he had found, he would eventually perish because of the betrayal of this lunatic boss. You must know that both divinity and divine personality are super good things. To a certain extent, divinity is a unique characteristic of God. For God, divinity is related to the mysterious energy of a deity's character, belief, law of conduct, and camp bias. Mortals can obtain a series of extraordinary abilities such as lifespan increase and resistance increase by absorbing divinity. Godhead can increase the total amount of divine power. Even if the divinity and the divine personality are all handed over, the guarantee of safety cannot be exchanged, and they are still betrayed mercilessly. How could it be possible to swallow this breath? Sirik of the Dog Day. Forget it, the matter of gods is too far away from me for the time being, let's think about how to deal with the Black Eclipse. Raven just finished cursing in his heart, when the system suddenly ding again. The main task is released be the boss or hold your thighs. This is a problem. Life is about making choices constantly, and every choice will in turn affect your life. Saunian, you have been bullied to the end, the opponent is a huge organization that can crush you with one finger, what are you going to do now? Depending on your choice and achievements, there will be different rewards. For a moment, Raven felt that he was being molested by the system. Speaking of which, this mission is super vague, I don't even know what the reward is. Of course, it can also be deduced by simple inferences that it must be the most tragic end to be a little sufferer and forget it. Raven remembered that the Black Eclipse Church in the game was a medium-sized church with hundreds of people. In the novice area, it was definitely a giant-level existence, and it was definitely not an enemy of a level 1 little assassin. It's very simple. After killing a Black Eclipse believer, as long as there are traces left, the hatred will be permanent immediately, and the whole church will be full of newbies to hunt you down. What's even more disgusting is that there is a necessary and helpless setting in the game, NPCs will be refreshed every 2 hours. That is to say, unless you are a super expert and slaughter all believers and priests at one time, you will be forever troubled by the Black Eclipse Church. Now that I have transmigrated by myself, then, there will be no refreshment, right? Isn't there something wrong? What is a god-level assassin? God-level assassins never kill people, they kill loneliness. Countless times beyond the limit of the challenge level to assassinate red famous monsters, countless times to kill one-handedly challenge the boss, for what? It's not just to prove that you can do what others can't. Unconsciously, Raven began to figure out how to clear the entire Black Eclipse Church while leveling up. In his conception, it is no problem to clean up ordinary believers, but the problem lies in the Guardian Knights of the Black Eclipse Church. In my impression, there is a diehard knight who seems to be very powerful. Raven, who was in a state of thought, was accidentally interrupted. There were footsteps in the distance, and the servant who had just left was coming back. After drinking the second bottle of holy water, he and Karen's fatal wound was settled, but the wound has not completely healed. The third bottle on hand is number 7, and it may be too late to reach out and get others. Obviously, the remaining holy water is not enough for 2 people. As soon as he gritted his teeth, Raven put the holy water on Karen's face. The price of doing this is that a large scar is left on his belly, and the shallow knife mark from the left eyebrow to the left cheek on Karen's beautiful face has completely disappeared. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Karen, who was originally intoxicated by the healing of the wound, also woke up because all the pain disappeared. Instinctively, she touched her wound, and then touched Raven's wound when it was too late to stop her. She realized what had happened, and the tears fell silently. Karen! It's okay, didn't you say scars are the badge of a man? These are trivial things. Raven comforted Karen in a dry language. But the more he talked, the more Karen cried. Karen gently held Raven's hand, but a bright smile bloomed on her face that should have been full of tears. Brother, you are so bad, how could I possibly marry someone else like this? Why can't you get married? Isn't your face completely healed? With a pucci, Karen's smile became even more flamboyant. With the help of dark vision, Raven could clearly feel this delicate beauty. She's only 13 years old, and she looks like a typical beauty embryo. Will it be okay when she grows up? Brother, you are just a piece of wood. Just when Raven wanted to say something, the footsteps were getting closer. Karen looked at the empty bottle in Raven's hand, and suddenly realized that they had stolen all the holy water, and someone would definitely find out. She widened her blue eyes anxiously. What should I do? Karen could imagine that once they were discovered, the 2 of them would face the thunder and wrath of the Church of Fortune. To make matters worse, a cat who ran from nowhere seemed to have spotted the ravens and was walking towards the transom. Are you going to be discovered? Lei Wen sighed, although I'm sorry for the cats, but I'm sorry. He quickly put the 2 empty bottles in place. Due to the light, at a glance, dozens of bottles of holy water are densely placed, and it is impossible to find one missing bottle if you don't look carefully. Then Raven covered Karen's mouth tightly with his hand. Karin was puzzled, but she didn't object, she just stared at Raven with wide eyes. Raven stretched out his hand from the transom, followed the light, and made a light hand shadow. The deceived cat was attracted by the shadow of the hand on the wall, made a sharp cat meow, and then swooped on the wall. Just below it was a pile of holy water bottles. A certain unscrupulous person secretly flipped the table. Ping pong pong. Oh! God! Elizabeth's! What have you done? The servant shouted in horror. All right. The poor cat took the blame for Raven and Karin. At this time, Raven and Karin quickly evacuated, they survived, and their savior was severely beaten. Returning to the sewer, Karin panted and asked, Brother, you are a genius, how did you think of putting the blame on the cat? I originally planned to lift the table when the servant came over. Most of the players are utter egoists. Raven is the best among them. This kind of thing that harms others and benefits oneself is not a trick to a cat, even if it is a human being, Raven will do it correctly. After the servant was beaten to death, Raven went to find a way to remedy it. As for going to Fortune Church to express his gratitude for the life-saving grace, Raven really never thought about it. This is the Church of Fortune. It is said that fair trade produces wealth, and secretly controls the half-black trade in the mainland, and even the soul loses money to the wealth church. There is no wealth priest who will do something that doesn't care about his own losses because of the gratitude of others. If you really take Karin to Shane, then the only result is that you will be caught on the spot, then beaten in the name of a thief, and finally branded as a slave. You will be sent to the slave market in a few days. This is the cruel fact of the Ultron world. If mortals do something wrong, they will be destroyed by gods or gods' spokespersons at any time. Fairness and justice have long been overridden by powerful theocracy. In the face of the violence of the gods, mortals either learn numbly to yield again and again, or die. This world is not without the so-called kind gods. The funny thing is that the teachings of the churches and gods of the good camp only apply to their own people, and they shrink when they encounter other gods, and they are not necessarily justice, but they are often overbearing in the name of justice. That kind of hypocrisy, no matter how many times he encountered it, Raven couldn't get used to it. This is also the reason why Raven is a lawful evil no matter his past or present life. Follow your own heart and do what you like. Originally, there was only a vague idea, but at this time, Raven strengthened his belief in this life, he will never hold any god's thighs again. I want to light my own fire. Elder brother. Karen's calling brought Raven's thoughts back to reality. Brother? What are we going to do now? In the sewers, Karen looked around blankly, the dark environment instinctively made her horrified. Find a place to settle down first. We have no money. Go to the slum to find an empty house and make do with one night. At this moment, Karen's stomach made a loud protest. Yes, the holy water of life can regenerate the internal organs. As the price of rebirth, in addition to divine power, it also consumes a lot of energy from the human body. The spirit of the two has recovered a lot, but the hunger in their abdomens has become stronger. Brother, actually, I'm not very hungry. Even though she was already starving, Karen was still stubbornly holding on. Raven gritted his teeth, and finally pressed the idea of stealing one. There are alarm traps on the kitchens and everything of value in all restaurants and pubs in the city of Fortune. The guards on patrol have templates of mercenaries and even elite swordsmen. In front of these traps and high-level professionals, if the skill of stealing or disarming traps does not have 100 points and dares to move casually, that is death. Not to mention that he is full of assassin skills. The dead ghost Raven is a commoner who has never learned the skills of stealing and disarming traps. Even if Raven has memories from his previous life, it is too late to start practicing now. Karen, hold on a little longer, trust me, and leave everything to me. I swear I can find food safely tomorrow afternoon at the latest. In their broken memories, the two had been hungry for 2 days before they came to the City of Fortune, and they only ate some blades of grass. Raven also knew that this was too cruel for a 13-year-old girl. He really had no choice. It was midnight, and the city gates were closed. Hearing Raven's words and recalling Raven's actions today, Karan always felt that Raven seemed to have changed a lot. When I think about it seriously, I think it is very reasonable. The boy who climbed back from the cliff became a man in an instant, became responsible and masculine. This is really normal. Although I really want to say what my father explained before his death, I don't know why I can't say it. That feeling of being cared for is not bad. Then leave it all to him. Karan pursed her lips and nodded her head. Brother, of course I believe you, everything is left to you. After leaving the sewers, he found a deserted house in the slum to settle Karan, and Raven began to think quietly. There are two things that must be done now, get food and get money. And being almost killed by someone. How can this bad breath come out? The girl who dared to touch the young master, and wanted the young master to die 3 times by the way? How can this revenge not be repaid? Raven's teeth are itchy. On the other hand, his memory and reason are also reminding him. At this moment, he can't beat the goods. Black Eclipse as the most disgusting force in the novice area, it naturally has its advantages. After all believers join the church, they will be given 2 special magic spells for the church. One is the Fangs of Corrosion that almost killed Raven. In the Black Iron rank, this divine art almost walked sideways. The second is the more maddening Hardening technique. This is a passive skill that grants believers 4 points of armor around the clock, and mad believers even get 8 points of armor. This means that even if a novice is streaking, it will permanently wear an extra piece of thin leather armor. Relying on these 2 points, Black Eclipse walks sideways in the City of Wealth. Except for the people and properties of the Church of the Goddess of Fortune who dare not touch, Black Eclipse has reached out to almost all the forces, big and small, for protection money, extorting every caravan passing through the City of Gold. Their approach is simply more gangster than gangster. Back then, Raven had the idea of joining Black Eclipse for a while, but then gave up unexpectedly. When the truth finally came out, Raven's stomach twitched for a whole day. The bosses of other churches are all gods, and no matter how bad they are powerful demons and the like. The boss of Black Eclipse is actually a middle-aged black dragon who accidentally obtained a fragment of the godhead and delusionally became a god. I have to say that this black dragon is really talented, and it has also figured out some uses of the power of faith with its wide-open brains. It's a pity it's just a black dragon that spit out acid. Among the 5-color evil dragons, they are only a little better than the white dragons. Players can kill a dozen black dragons with one hand after entering the sanctuary after level 100. The game Black Eclipse Church was destroyed 3 months after the game was launched. On that day, even the faucet was hung on the head of the city, and all players who joined Black Eclipse were all slapped with blood. No matter how bad the boss of Black Eclipse is, he is still a godlike existence to Raven at this time. Raven couldn't even deal damage to Black Eclipse fanatics if he was holding a normal whiteboard weapon in the blacksmith's shop. So the first goal of Raven's plan was to make a dagger that could be used in his hands. Civilians do not count towards occupational rank. Occupation level 20 was called the Black Iron level before. In the City of Wealth at this stage, there is only one best weapon that is suitable and has the opportunity to start. This is the easiest and most difficult weapon to acquire. However, based on the experience of God-level players, this is not a problem. The question now is, should I just seek revenge on one person, or should I target the entire Black Eclipse Church? Raven only thought about this question for a second. Since you want to take revenge, you reading www.yuyuganshu.com, then killing one is killing, and killing a group is also killing. Anyway, the Black Eclipse Church is not a good thing. If you don't make a big vote, the name of the god-level assassin will cry. Raven's mind was spinning, and soon a perfect plan came into his mind. Under the cover of night, Raven came to the house of the Church of Fortune. This mansion covering an area of 300 square meters belongs to a personal guardian knight of Sirius, who is a knight during the day, and a knight at night. His house is extremely luxurious, and even the spikes on the wall to prevent outsiders from entering are made of colored glass. In the game, an idle player was bored to perform the identification technique on each piece of glass, but unexpectedly found that one piece of glass was not actually glass, but a crystal that could be used as a dagger. As a result, the most gorgeous dagger that a rambler in the novice area could get was born. This dagger is not easy to handle. Every gold coin of the Church of Fortune solidifies the divine tracking technique of the Church of Fortune. Without the dispelling technique with 3 or more rings, the tracking effect cannot be eliminated at all. Even the decorations on the walls cast retrospective magic. Whoever destroys will leave behind the aura of the destroyer. The Church of Fortune is like this: your gold coins are mine, and my gold coins are mine. Whoever dares to steal or the things of the Fortune Church, wait for a bounty at a high price. Therefore, on the contrary, the patrols on the side of the Fortune Church are relatively lax. Knowing this, Raven actually went to steal it. P.S. New book for recommendation, rolling all over the floor asking for all kinds of stealing things from the Church of Fortune. If a layman does it, it would be death. For experts to do it, it is a steal. In a previous life, Raven was a rogue before he became an assassin. Stealing stuff or something is a good thing. The stats of ordinary adult men are all 10. Although Raven's 17point agility wouldn't allow him to easily jump over the eaves and walls, it was still very easy to jump over the Tumaturai wall. First, Raven comfortably drizzled the corrosive fang acid that was forced out of his body on the spikes of the fence. The acid of corrosive teeth is difficult to corrode glass products, and it is very easy for the lime on the wall. Very easily, the base of the glass fragments was softened by the acid. As soon as Raven picked up his hands, he pulled out his target, a black crystal piece connected by 2 long diamonds, one large and one small. Into the eye is a string of attribute data: item name, obsidian thorn +1 type, dagger weight, 1.7 kilograms, item level, dark iron rank, rare equipment damage, 810 points, item description: this is a weapon with a magical history. Its past owner was an elf slave. With this obsidian polished dagger, it miraculously smashed out of and returned to the Ultron continent. The blood of demons had been left on its blade, and the pained whispers of the souls shuddered. This is a dagger made of limited materials, without any forging, only the most primitive percussion. Despite this, the dagger retains the most powerful sharpness characteristic of obsidian. Equipment requirements: 10 or more strength. Equipment effect: hardness, sharpness, +1 sharpness, +2 penetration, +1 hardness, +3 armor penetration. Weapon special effects: forbidden. After this weapon pierces the body of a weak enemy whose maximum HP is less than 50, there will be an 80% chance to produce a 5-second silence effect within 1 meter of the enemy's body. Effects that do not produce arcane waves are treated as natural effects. Weapon characteristics: sharpness. This weapon has a certain chance to permanently damage any black iron armor during battle. This obsidian thorn is an artifact for novice thieves. Obviously it is a dagger, but it has the attack power of a whiteboard axe, and many bronze-level weapons do not have that series of special effects. The most frustrating thing is the forbidden language, which is definitely a must-have for home travel, murder, and arson. You shout. No one will hear you if you scream. This classic line of dialogue is the most appropriate here. The only downside of the obsidian thorn is that it is too heavy for a dagger. In fact, if Raven didn't pick up the obsidian thorn, according to the history of the game, this artifact in the novice area would also be unearthed a month later. Remember that the first person to get this dagger happened to be Eclipse. Recalling this, Raven shuddered. Nima. The guy who was really eroded by the black took away the dagger. Wouldn't I be unable to avenge until the 20th bronze level? By the time I get to the bronze rank, maybe the black erosion has already been wiped out, and not even a single blade of grass remains. Back at Karen's side, Karen showed a surprised smile. Is it done? It's half done. Let's go to sleep tonight. In the still cold March, the two fell asleep snuggling together like this. In her sleep, Karen accidentally touched Raven's new dagger, her body trembled slightly, and after all, she didn't say anything and went back to sleep. Early the next morning, Raven disguised himself as a middle-aged wanderer and went to the Adventurers Guild in the east of the city. The expected bounty was released. Catch the thief. The thief used acid to steal a piece of obsidian for decoration on the wall outside the mansion of Knight Abbot under the command of the Goddess of Fortune last night. Now the reward is released, get the thief's finger 50 silver coins, recover the stolen goods 2 gold coins. Only the big dog of the Church of Fortune offered such an exaggerated reward, which was at least 50% higher than the normal reward. Raven smiled, this is what he was waiting for. The most important thing for a good assassin is patience. For a full morning, Raven lurked near the Black Eclipse fanatic who rewarded him with a corrupted fang, quietly listening to all the news about the target. That guy's name is Punk, a fanatic is his identity, and he is a barbarian. In fact, Raven started to sigh when he saw Punk's body shape. As a god-level assassin, the most annoying thing is to assassinate barbarians. One is poverty. These muscle-headed guys will throw every penny they earn into wine bottles and women's stomachs. You can't find anything of value even if you kill these poor ghosts. Second, there is no challenge. Among the 8 basic occupations in the Ultron world, the most careless and unsuspecting is the barbarian, who is almost full of flaws. If it wasn't for hatred, Raven would rather kill a magist than 100 barbarians. Third, barbarians have strong vitality and long blood. Other professions can kill with one blow, and the barbarian may have to be stabbed in the heart several times before hanging, which is completely inconsistent with the aesthetics of Lay's one-hit kill. It's a pity that Raven pursues the philosophy of life that if you have a vengeance, you will get revenge. Although he is reluctant, he still dutifully figured out what he should know. Every time it was time to eat, that guy would get drunk with his fellow church members, and then he would go around looking for women day and night, maybe looking for a warbler, or like last night looking for a girl in a slum area to be violent. In a heat-and challenge, Raven had no chance of winning, and no matter how bad the Black Eclipse fanatic, the challenge level in the game would not be lower than level 7. That is to say, the average professional cannot challenge this guy until level 7, and he may not be able to win. If the other party is drunk, it is impossible to say, maybe the challenge level will drop to about level 4. For Raven, a level 1 novice assassin, level 4 is also a huge challenge. This means that if you miss a hit, you will definitely be counter-killed. Faced with this situation, the cowardly will give up. Conservatives will choose to team up. But who is Raven? The former God's Fang, a level 118 assassin. Vengeance must be avenged. The pride of a god-level assassin does not allow him to back down. Punk must die. Raven continued to wait, from when Punk staggered out of the tavern to when he separated from his friends, Raven followed far behind. Raven was very hungry. In order to avoid the sound of his stomach alarming the target, Raven even forced himself to eat a lot of moss. Don't look at the fact that Punk can't walk steadily now. If Raven rushes up, even if he doesn't need corrosive teeth, he can make Raven lie down again in minutes. This time, it was very likely that it was torn off before I had time to drink the foot wash. Raven was very patient, and quietly shuttled through the roofs of the slums, following Punk not far or near. 2 o'clock at noon is the hottest time of the day. The slight warmth brought by the early spring sunshine makes Punk's whole body soft and soft. Maybe he would be more vigilant at night, and it was noon now, and he couldn't help but let his guard down. Possibly because he drank too much, Punk turned into a dim alley, took off his pants, took out his dick, and let out water. With no one around, Raven looked at the ground behind Punk for the last time before he shot. Unlike the main streets, the streets mostly use bluestone as the pavement. In the slum area, there is only 1 foot deep and 1 shallow mud. Fortunately, it didn't rain today, otherwise the sound of stepping into a puddle might startle Punk. With a wealth of experience, he quickly found a route that was the most sturdy and quietest, and Raven quietly fell to the ground like a civet cat. Personal feat hidden is activated, all judgments about hiding and sneaking +2 professional skill hide activated. The hiding was successful, and the other party's perception was deceived. The width of a person's field of vision is only about 120 degrees. As long as he hides his hearing and other perceptual organs, Raven cannot be discovered. As a ghost, he touched Punk's back silently, and Raven was ready to act. According to the assassin code, the most ideal way is of course to cut the throat. There is a problem here. Punk is much taller than Raven, a head taller. If you still stick to the assassin code, you will most likely accidentally poke Punk on the shoulder halfway through. If so, being counterkilled would be Raven's only end. Raven took a bolder approach. He raised a short stick high, slowly swung a standard circle in the air, and smashed it silently at the back of Punk's head. Knock the sap. Deadly attack launch. The assassin uses a melee weapon to sneak attack because he observes the opponent's 3 breaths, and causes damage. This sneak attack has a paralyzing effect. The target fails the fortitude check, and the target is physically and mentally weakened. This sneak attack deals 3 points of damage to the target. The sudden intense pain was mixed with an indescribable dizziness, and Punk's body suddenly softened. With a clean cut, Raven had already dodged to Punk's right side, like a venomous snake flying out, stabbing the obsidian thorn in his hand. A perfect hit. He avoided the ribs under his right armpit, pierced through the thick layer of skin that was once impenetrable, easily penetrated between the 2 ribs, penetrated the entire right lung, and finally opened a large hole in the ventricle. In an instant, blood rushed out from the hole in the ventricle and quickly poured into the right lung. The silence special effect of the obsidian thorn was triggered, as if it wiped out the surrounding air. Punk opened his mouth wide for 5 seconds, unable to say a word. The silence effect was over, and while the paralyzing effect of the deadly attack was still there, Raven stretched his neck and whispered softly beside his head, "Thank you for the corrosive teeth you gave me last night and for my sister. The knife in the face. Since you left me dead after you fatally wounded me last night, I will return it to you as it is now." "What? It's that kid." "Impossible." Punk's bloodshot eyes widened, and his heart was full of horror and regret. The severe pain in his heart kept reminding him of the passing of his life. Of course, he knew that he was fierce, and after regaining his mobility, he immediately vented all his anger on the attack. Pulling out the axe from his waist, he swept the entire body with a whirling slash. Unfortunately, in front of a former god-level assassin, his actions were too easy to see through. Raven, who had been prepared for a long time, stood with his hands behind his back, and hid behind him with half a cat on his waist. Naturally, his swing split was missing. Raven is like a most savvy hunter. After dealing a fatal blow to his prey, he quietly waits for the death of the prey. Punk waved his limbs furiously, hastening his own death. No matter how he punched, kicked, and swung his axe, Raven was just like his shadow, sticking firmly behind him. Raven didn't make up for it, he just used him as a target for the practice of hiding the eyes. Through the system, he can see that his skill level is slowly rising. Playing with the bear lasted for half a minute, Punk's movements eventually became slower and slower, and his life was about to come to an end. He fell to his knees in front of the wall, coughing blood. Raven strangled Punk's neck with his left hand from behind, feeling the bastard's weaker and weaker random struggles comfortably. "I swore last night don't let me survive. Otherwise, I'll kill you first. Now it seems that I'm about to fulfill my oath." Ouch! With Raven's neck stuck, Punk couldn't utter a word. "Now I just want to ask, who was the last person who rotted to death in the ditch?" Punk regretted it, really regretted it. If time went back to yesterday, even if he was killed, he would not provoke this pair of brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, no amount of regrets could stop his life from passing. Suddenly, Punk suffered another pain, and Raven cut off his right index finger mercilessly. This is the practice of dealing with thieves on the mainland. The first offense cuts off the right index finger, and the second offense simply chops off the right hand. After Punk's body stopped twitching, Raven gently lowered Punk's huge body. Raven's mood at the moment is very complicated, everything is so familiar, and all the touches and movements are almost the same as the 100% realistic Ultron World game. In fact, this was his first murder in the true sense. There was no panic, no discomfort, and no unpleasant nausea as imagined. Instead, there was a sense of joy mixed with ecstasy. Right. Do it yourself, it is no longer cold data, no longer a fake corpse that will disappear in a while, but a real person. Thinking of this, I have an inexplicable sense of achievement in my heart. Is it because the assassin instinct left over from the previous life affected Raven's soul? Or did Raven really fit into the world? Raven didn't know. After the assassination, he habitually began to touch the body. Raven accidentally took out a piece of paper at the innermost part of the Punk pocket. The things above made Raven completely unable to calm down. That is his portrait, with his name and detailed experience on it. Taking a deep breath, Lei Wen instantly realized that this was not a murder case caused by casually molesting the girl. It was a premeditated murder against him. What shocked Raven even more was that this was not a portrait copied by an artist of the assassin organization. Who is so generous? To track down a person with prophecy and understand it so clearly, the amount to be spent will definitely not be less than 10,000 gold coins. What shocking secrets do you have in your body that are worth spending so much money on? Ray Wen repeatedly recalled the experience of this body, and he was obviously a very ordinary civilian who made a living by hunting and farming. I really don't know why my head is so valuable. Inexplicably, Ray Wen shuddered. For some reason, Ray Wen suddenly remembered the sharp eyes of the forest servant goblins before entering the city, and thought to himself, if there is really a behind-the-scenes manipulator who uses the forest servant goblins and the Black Eclipse Church to chase and kill them in series. That's exaggerated, isn't it? Which giant was behind the scenes against him? Or are you involved in the plot of the game? Raven was very distressed. There were definitely a lot of big events that happened at the beginning of the game. Almost every Ray Wen can recite 8*9s and 10, but the current situation is that Ray Wen's information is seriously insufficient, and he cannot be included in any known plot. Raven continued to touch the corpse in a chaotic mind. No other valuable information. On the contrary, the savage's poverty made Raven curse incessantly. Tang Tang, a core fanatic of the church, actually only has 1 silver coin in his body. No wonder the Black Eclipse believers in my memory like to mob girls everywhere. Because the girls don't want money. In addition, the only gain is a white axe and a white dagger from the blacksmith shop. The axe was directly lost by Raven. It was worthless, and it still had a mark on it. Dagger attributes. Damage, 13 points. Durability, 4/11. Seeing this dagger, Raven wanted to die. Well, go back and use it for Karen's self-defense. No matter how bad it is, it can be used as a flying knife. After touching the corpse and imprinting a bunch of boots' footprints, after erasing the traces that belonged to him at the scene, Ray Wen left the scene as quickly as possible. When he got to a safe place, Raven took a deep breath and inspected his gains. Just now, the system issued a prompt, and Ray Wen only had time to look at it now. Backstab activated. Backstab successful. Damage x2. Hit the opponent's fatal key. Backstab is changed to a fatal attack. Deals a total of 34 points of damage to the target. The target is dying. Lose 20 points of life per minute due to bleeding. Target dies. Drain the target's soul energy. Since the target's challenge level is level 4, which is 3 levels higher than me, an additional 200 killing experience will be awarded. A total of 300 killing experience points will be obtained. Without that portrait, Raven would have laughed until his mouth crooked when he saw this prompt. Under normal circumstances, only by forming a team can you challenge an enemy that exceeds your own challenge level by 2. Now relying on the sneak attack and the obsidian thorn, he has completed the feat of leapfrog murder, and the reward is of course extremely rich. And the killing experience that can only be obtained by fighting and killing is the highest level of experience, which can be used to assign it to all occupations, part-time jobs, and job transfer templates. Considering the existence of the mastermind behind the scenes, Raven urgently needed to improve his combat effectiveness, so he chose to take up the position of assassin immediately. In the Ultron world, taking a job is also very interesting. Each occupation can be said to be completely different. For example, paladins are devout warriors. As long as their hearts are filled with justice and light, they will be inspired by the good gods. As long as they respond in their hearts, they are already paladins at that moment. After the event, it is only a supplementary ritual after the event. The official inauguration of an assassin generally requires the approval of an assassin guild. In fact, as long as you meet the requirements, you can still take up your own job, but you will lose an assassin badge that adds 1 point of agility attribute. Considering that possessing the assassin badge is equivalent to exposing himself to Syric's priest, Raven still chose to take up the post. Inaugural assassins must meet several conditions: any evil alignment, disguise level 4, hide level 8, stealth level 8, and the ability to kill just to be an assassin. The last point is actually a psychological judgment. Of course, Raven, who has lived in 2 lives, is no problem. With a ding sound, the "not inaugurated" on the system properties panel disappeared. He decisively added all the killing experience to the assassin profession, and the profession level was immediately upgraded to level 3. If Raven is a rogue in the base 8 classes, this experience is enough for him to advance to level 5 or 6. Since Raven was employed as a bronze-ranked assassin, while acquiring powerful skills, the experience penalty was also quite severe. With the upgrade, Raven gains 1 free attribute point and 24 professional skill points. As an assassin, agility is the main item. Before hitting 20 points of agility to get the special bonus of basic attributes, Raven didn't plan to use his attribute points in other places. Considering that he might be hunted down next, Raven added skill points to sneak and hide. In addition, due to the successful completion of punk, sneak attacks and fatal attacks have been slightly increased. In this way, Raven's properties become: name, Raven. Race, half-elf / Attributes, Strength 11, Agility 18, Constitution 12, Intelligence 18, Wisdom 15, Charisma 19. Alignment, Lawful Evil. Occupation, Level 10 Civilian / Level 3 Assassin Dark Iron rank. Health, 33/33, Health, Experience Points, General 0. Killing Experience 30, Unassigned. Skill Points, None. Attribute Point, None. Status, Healthy. Occupational Skills Sneak 40, Disguise 24, Hide 33, Bluff 12, Sneak Attack 11, Deadly Attack 13. Legendary Skill Mad Letter Seal. Racial Skill Dark Vision. Personal Expertise Secret, Persuasive, Well Known. Personal Skill Self-Stability Legendary. After adding the points, I added a sense of familiarity to each skill in my mind, and the more obvious aspect is the agility. The whole person feels a little lighter. Closing the attribute table, Raven's mouth curled into a cold smile. Once again, he disguised himself as the middle-aged wanderer, and Raven went to the Adventurers Guild to hand in the quest. The person in charge of the verification task is an old man. Don't look at his sleepy eyes and the appearance of not waking up. The main or part-time job who can sit in this seat must be the priest of Sulfras, god of prophecy, and all of them are good at prophecy. Prophecy is a disgusting spell in the game. As long as you ask the priest of sulfuras with a clue, the priest can easily give a clear direction or judge the truth of someone's words through prophecy. In the state of performing divine arts, what the priest said is absolutely true, and in many cases this is a kind of perspective that is almost open. It's March, and 2 months before the priest of sulfuras loses his prophetic powers in game history. In fact, due to the arrival of the turbulent year, the prophecy of sulfuras's priests has been a little inaccurate, and only the general direction is still reliable. I'm here to hand in mission 9527. Raven handed Punk's finger. The old man glanced at Raven and didn't look again. This kind of reward for catching a thief is not popular, and only rookie wanderers will accept this kind of reward quest. The old man quickly got a positive answer by calmly using Sulfuras's magical technique to compare the information with his fingers. If there is a mistake, there is a ghost. The acid Raven used to water the walls was definitely a Punk. The person is right. There is another thing on the UU reading www.uugonshu.com reward. Did you find it? Raven grinned. I won't get along with gold coins. For anyone, gold coins are absolutely as much as they have. If he could exchange a piece of broken glass for gold coins, Raven would never mind returning it to the original owner. It's a pity that Raven was holding a god-level dagger from the Black Iron rank. Back in the game, 100 gold coins were worthless. The old man was also accustomed to the greedy character of wanderers, so he ignored it and asked, "Isn't anyone killed?" At least he was still struggling with excitement when I cut off his finger. Right. Just dying. Raven once again passed the divine prophecy check. There is a real difference between the fingers cut off from the dead and those from the living. Magic checks are also completely different. The old man's thinking was deterred into a misunderstanding by Raven. Adventurers always pay 80 cents for 80% of their effort. If the reward is for the head, it is definitely another price. Nobody wants to do more. If he really misses the target, the adventurer will most likely choose to run away, rather than calmly collecting such a small bounty. And the adventurer is notorious for killing or burying. As long as he doesn't kill him at the time, it's not his business if he hangs up later. Anyway, the city of wealth is dying every day. Who would have thought that the so-called thief turned out to be a baby fanatic of Black Eclipse? Just like that, Raven calmly left the Adventurers Guild. Fire has been lit. With the 50 silver coins he just got, Raven ran as fast as he could to buy food. Rarely has some money, Raven really doesn't want to eat brown bread. Don't look at black and white bread is a word difference. It tastes like heaven and hell. Back then, I had no money in the game, and I had to satisfy the hunger given by the system, so I had to eat hard brown bread. That thing is really not for human consumption. Eating it directly is like gnawing on a moldy door panel. You can barely eat it until you soak it in water. White bread is much better, at least it's made of wheat, without any mess. Of course, that price is also at least 5 times that of black bread, at least only the wealthier class can afford it. Using 20 silver coins to buy a pile of white bread and 4 bottles of milk, Lei Wenfei usually rushed back to Karin. When she opened the paper bag, she found that what Raven had bought was actually white bread. Karin was stunned for a moment, then she threw away the hesitation and took the bread and took a big mouthful. If it was said that she ate so fast because she was hungry, Raven would not understand why she cried while eating. The bread was not stolen. Raven raised the quest receipt of the Adventurers Guild in his hand. I caught a hairy thief. Karin shook her head and swallowed the bread in her mouth. Catch a thief is not enough for you to let go of your hatred. Your eyes are for revenge. And are you in office? Before Raven could finish speaking, he saw Karin touching the leggings covered by her trousers, where Punk's dagger was placed. After a moment of hesitation, the dagger already fell into Karin's hands. A terrible dagger, but I hope to keep it forever. Karin's black eyes stared at Raven, and there was something called stubbornness in her eyes. In Raven's stunned, Karin continued to speak, Her tone became decisive. "Brother, you are good to me, I know. I firmly believe that you will never harm me. If you bring something that will cause death and destruction, let us bear it together." God! What is a good woman? This is a good woman. Raven was speechless, all kinds of feelings flooded into his heart. If Karin is not his own sister, then it's over. Wait. Raven found that he hadn't received all the information about Karin from Raven, the dead ghost. Is Nima's biological sister? Damn Raven, give me a letter of approval. If not, then she is sister. Capable sister. Raven was in an infinite tangle. All right. No matter how you scream, it's pointless. As a good young man, even if Raven was a beast, he would not be able to overthrow a lowly who was barely still within the warranty period. Raven's mind became a mess, and he suddenly realized that he didn't know how to deal with each other. On the other side, the Black Eclipse Church fry the pot. A mad believer is a very valuable asset for every god, and the stronger the mad believer, the more power of faith provided to the god. Often a mad believer can top at least 20 ordinary believers. You must know that the Black Dragon boss is just a pseudo-god with a fragment of the godhead, and there is no miracle that he can do. Suddenly a level 7 madman hangs up, and it is strange that he is not crazy. Heilong was famous for being short-tempered, treacherous and bad-hearted. He sensed it the moment Punk died, and immediately sent an oracle to ask the priest to investigate the matter thoroughly. With Raven's inducement, the spearhead was easily pointed at the Church of Fortune under the guidance of a certain god of prophecy. For a time, the City of Wealth was lively. The Black Eclipse Church accused the Fortune Church of murdering their fanatics, and asked the Fortune Church to give an explanation. The Church of Wealth in turn accused the members of the Church of Black Eclipse of stealing the treasure of the God of Wealth. Every copper coin of the God of Wealth is its treasure, and declared that it only issued a reward for catching thieves. Black Eclipse Church had justification on the spot, slapped the table and declared that it was a public massacre. The Fortune Church can hold tens of millions of gold coins, how could it be a good man and a woman? A certain guardian knight exploded on the spot, and decided to teach the Black Eclipse Church a lesson in the way of the Fortune Church. Right. This product is posted for a bounty. Even though he was anonymous, he took it back less than half an hour after it was posted, and even though he just asked Black Eclipse to teach the church a good lesson, Raven still seized this opportunity. In another alley, Raven slammed the mouth of a Black Eclipse cultist with his left hand, and the sharp blade of the obsidian thorn in his right hand easily slashed the cultist's throat. When cutting the throat, Raven deliberately shifted a few points to slow down the target's death rate by a few points. As the Black Eclipse cultists were dying, Raven said, "Go to hell. Die poor." This is the mantra of a typical Fortune Church believer. Seeing that the believers used the last strength of their lives to draw the pattern of the gold coin of the Goddess of Wealth on the ground, Raven knew that his goal had been achieved. This time, Raven didn't touch the body, let alone go back to get paid. His attack on Eclipse also stopped. The only gain is 50 kill experience points. This is a first-level ordinary believer, and it has been unexpected for Raven to have so much experience. Fire at both ends is necessary. Raven returned to the secret passage of the sewer again and stole a batch of holy water of life from the Fortune Church. What was left at the scene was Black Eclipse Church's signature acid. I have done everything I can, and the rest is to watch the play. Raven transformed himself into a rustic farmer who even hid his fingers in black, and took Karin out of the city without hesitation. In a small town outside the city, rent a room in a small hotel for 1 silver coin a day and settle Karin. Stay by yourself in a shabby tavern listening to all the news from the City of Fortune. At the same time, a doomed negotiation in the City of Gold is unfolding. At the negotiating table, the Church of Fortune negotiator, Barrister Theres, is dressed in garish clothing, a silk shirt, leather sleeves and booties, a gilded crown studded with gems, and a silk satin hem straps are tied with various gadgets. In addition, the short tops, trousers, and stockings on the body are all made of the most expensive fabrics and furs, and use a variety of bright and gorgeous design styles as much as possible. Then she put on a heavy gilded red cloak, decorated with thousands of sequins and hooks made of various precious metals. Finally, a pair of white silk gloves and a gilded scepter studded with enchanted gems. Their attire was so luxurious that even the king sighed, let alone the priest of the Black Eclipse Church, who looked like a beggar in comparison. The priest of Black Eclipse's eyes were red, and his eyes looking at the priest of the Goddess of Wealth revealed a clear enthusiasm. Unfortunately, this is the point that makes Ceres the most dissatisfied. All the other parties' focus is on her luxurious decorations rather than her own beauty. She tapped the table in disgust, reminding the other side to return to the negotiating table. Whenever the other party came back to his senses, the lion opened his mouth again. Do you have nothing to say about the losses suffered by our fortune church? Your theft has nothing to do with us at all. Instead, we want the Temple of Wealth to publicly apologize for the deaths of our believers and compensate our Black Eclipse Church with 1 million gold coins. 1 million? Your robbery! Therier screamed. The negotiation didn't take half an hour, and the Temple of Wealth realized that it would never be able to satisfy the other party's greed. Indeed, even if all the gold coins from the entire continent were brought in, it would not be able to satisfy the endless greed of an evil black dragon. In the end, as Raven had expected, the battle started. The arrogant Black Eclipse is not at all prepared for the means of the Temple of Fortune, and those guys with long brains don't even know what the reward order will bring to their side. In their eyes blinded by the light of the gold coins, there is only the imaginary sky-high compensation. The Temple of Wealth did not do anything, just because it was afraid that the destruction of Black Eclipse would affect the neutral image of the Temple of Wealth. Once you make up your mind, the Black Eclipse Church is just a joke. The Temple of Wealth did not even mobilize the city guards of the City of Gold. It was just a fluttering bounty, and several large mercenary groups rushed into the headquarters of the Black Eclipse Church screaming. City Master Order. After investigation, the Church of Black Eclipse is the minions of the bottomless abyss demon. Read www.yuyugonshu.com is now issuing a clearing order. Anyone who kills the Lord of Black Eclipse will be rewarded 1,000 gold coins, Guardian Knights will be 2,500 gold coins according to their strength level, 100 gold coins of Black Eclipse priests, 30 gold coins of mad believers, and 3 gold coins of ordinary believers, as evidenced by Black Eclipse tattoos. As soon as the Qing suppression order was issued, Raywen laughed. Because of his little butterfly, the Church of Black Eclipse was destroyed 3 months earlier than in the history of the game. In the game, he never participated in the siege of the Black Eclipse Church. This did not prevent him from learning about the process through other channels. He stayed in the town for nothing else, because he knew that the Black Eclipse Church had a secret escape exit right next to the town. It was a log cabin close to the river. The log cabin had a small pier and a well-kept boat was parked all year round. Riding along the turbulent river, it takes up to 5 hours to reach the Fred Swamp where the Black Dragon is located. If you don't want to fight with water, then the underground passage in the cabin is the last chance to intercept the backbone of the Black Eclipse Church. Hurrying back to the hotel room, Karan was boredly playing with the punk's dagger in the room. In the past, when he saw people playing knives, Lai Wen always thought that knives were all ruffians. This time, I felt a sense of beauty inexplicably, as if the common dagger had become a female accessory, a prop for the knife dance Karan was dancing. I'm going out to clean up the remnants of Black Eclipse, you stay here. Karan stood up suddenly, my physical strength has recovered, don't treat me as a noble lady. In Raven's impression, although Karan has learned stealth skills, it's for hunting, not the assassin's route. I'm a stealth operation this time, it's not suitable for you. With pursed lips, Karan did not refute in the end, she just asked, you must at least tell me the place, and I will pick you up if there is a situation. Orion's daughter has seen blood after all. With Karen's character, she won't be willing to stay behind after recovering her strength. After hesitating, Raven still told her, there is a small wooden house 200 meters north of the stone bridge in the east of the town. That is my goal. You can hide from the grass downwind of the wooden house. All hotels in the town will also be searched soon. It will be very troublesome for us without a free citizenship card, so pack up and go straight. A free citizenship certificate is a so-called non-criminal certificate. Anyway, as long as you can afford the money, even if you are a devil, any city sheriff will issue you this free citizenship certificate. This is a very funny paradox. But the whole continent recognizes this. People feel that you can afford the proof, that at least proves that you are not the lowest thief or gangster. The two set off and came to the vicinity of the wooden house. Seeing that Karan was hiding in the grass, Raven sneaked into the wooden house quietly. As soon as he entered, Raven cursed his mother. Raven's memory is correct, this is indeed the place where the Black Eclipse Church runs. The situation in front of him deviates from his memory. Serious deviation. He originally expected that there would be at most 2 people guarding here. He listened to the wooden house for a long time and didn't feel anyone's breath, and observed it by the window for a long time. There is nothing strange in the hall, just a lot of debris. What? Broken cupboards, old ropes, so he groped in. As soon as you come in, you are hit. The moment he stepped into the hall, a pile of ropes on the ground that seemed to be unused for a long time suddenly moved. The thick hemp ropes tumbled, like a large number of snakes in a snake's nest, twisting and entangling each other. They circled at high speed to form arms, ankles, calves, and thighs, and they were instantly entangled into a human-like shape. This guy stood almost as tall as 2 ravens. His face was only roughly the outline of a human face, and 2 pure white energy groups were burning at the position of the eyes. Raven, who was caught off guard, instantly understood what this thing was. Nemes is a strangling golem. The strangling golem, also known as the rope golem, will disguise itself as a pile of old ropes and ambush intruders when not activated. The smallest strangling golem in the game also has 450 health points and the challenge level is as high as level 52, which means that at least the middle silver rank can beat this thing. You have to use the right method, because this thing is almost physically immune. Suddenly, thousands of grass mud horses were running wild in Raven's heart. Why are you so dark? I actually came across this thing in the novice area. Definitely can't beat it. Running away? I have already entered the pit, and within a radius of 10 meters is the world of strangling golems. Don't even think about it unless you have more than 100 intuitive evasion and escape skills. At this critical moment, Raven's mind was spinning, trying to remember everything about the strangle golem. The Ultron world once had a powerful human empire, Nellas, which had a vast territory of hundreds of thousands of square kilometers in its heyday. Within its borders, civilization and knowledge flourished, including the study of magic. Warlocks and technologists began to make progress in the study of constructs, especially golems, which contained autonomy. 3 centuries later, King Easil III began to fund the Society of Imperial Technicians, an independent body of skilled craftsmen chosen by the king but not subject to his constraints. The goal he set for them was to create a highly adaptable artificial creation capable of sentience without imprisoning immortal spirits or elementals. Ideally, such a creature would be able to carry out its mission autonomously and be able to learn from it. Easil's son, Iridile, came to the throne after his father's death, before the technicians could finish their work. The constant upheaval in the wild lands of the empire made the purpose of work in the service of war. He needed soldiers, not just the ideal construct golem. In order to accomplish this goal, Illidir used the power of the king to order more alchemists and warlocks who study the soul to invest in this research. In order to complete their goals as soon as possible, these warlocks did not hesitate to imprint the knowledge about the mechanics into their blood and soul. So far, the warlocks were born as a new branch of warlocks. Under the leadership of the warlock, the Imperial Technician Association quickly completed the first creation furnace, and at the same time, the first mass-produced golem that was purely used for warfare was built. But Illidir's demands caused a split in the association. Some dreamers hoped to create the constructs imagined by the late old King Illihir. This part of the mechanism warlocks left the association with a group of technicians, and at the same time took away the technical copy used to create the mechanism golem. In any case, Illidir's preparations for war were far-sighted. The Empire of Neraz soon found itself engulfed in a massive war against the humanoids and demons of the savage lands. The king allowed nobles to be relieved of the obligation to fight for the empire, as long as they could afford to create those warlocks who would take their place. The treasury of the Neraz Empire supports the construction of more constructed soldiers. Throughout the empire, even the betrayed warlocks and technologists used their forge of creation to create golems of all kinds to win wars. There is no doubt that golems, which do not fear death and injury, play an extremely important role in the confrontation. With them, the Neraz Empire won. But after the death of the king, his heirs, and several of its most influential leaders, the empire collapsed quickly, mired in factional rivalries and territorial disputes. Creation furnaces are sometimes used by some minor nobles for very amateurish purposes. The remaining golems were recruited into new armies, enslaved, or left to fend for themselves. Decades later, regional wars subsided due to shrinking trade and the consolidation of local aristocracy. The Neraz Empire eventually split into separate nations divided by long, narrow wilderness. Even so, there are still quite a few golems that survive, although the most intelligent ones have almost been lost in battle. Thousands of years have passed, the Neraz Empire has ceased to exist, and there are still a small number of creative furnaces working in a corner of the world and constantly producing new golems. The descendants of the Imperial Technician Association are still using the old title, producing new golems through black market merchants and selling them to the army, nobles, and other forces that can afford the price. Defensive golems are the most common. These golems that can only accept simple orders can be more disgusting than a dragon in the right place. If this was a mass-produced golem that only knew death, Raven would be dead. If it is a high-intelligence version of the golem, then there may be a chance of survival. Do not care. Give it a go. If not, just die. Seeing that the golem was about to strike, Labian shouted in the Nelas language commonly used by the ancient Nelas Empire, which had long since perished, Asamidu, Toranka. To the effect of don't shoot your own people. And in order to frighten the strangling golem, Raven also added the high-ranking particle unique to the warlock in his words. The strangling golem really stopped, and the energy group in the eye area flickered. Suddenly, a piece of rope twisted on its body, concatenated into a string of Nera's words. The general idea was, "Who are you? I can't sense the authority to pass on you." Ding! The system prompt sounded. You launched a skill show. At this moment, your actor is possessed, and depending on your performance, you will get death or chance. You activated the skill bluff. You sent a non-magical hint to the strangling golem, disguised as the Black Eclipse camp. Because you have the special skill Persuader, the opponent's suspicion of you is reduced by 20%. After resolutely launching the skill, Raven continued to speak the Lotus in Nella's language. I am Raven, the special envoy sent by His Majesty Lucian de Zakar, the Great and Supreme Black Dragon King. Because of the treachery of the Goddess of Wealth, Vol'jin, to us Black Eclipse sect launched a despicable sneak attack, our followers were slaughtered, and our pastor was threatened with life, so I was sent to the Black Dragon's secret path to receive the chief priest Fakalan. Due to the emergency, I didn't bring the token for a while. Raven said everything about Black Eclipse in his memory. If there is no accident, the names of the Black Dragon and the priest should be able to match. After speaking here, the system over there will send a prompt. Strangling Golem Rope, I believed you. Thanks to your erudition and perfect Nelazen language, you have successfully deceived an opponent far superior to you. Your performance skills have been greatly improved, and now the skill level is 45. Your bluff skill has been greatly improved, now at skill level 33. As soon as the reminder came out, Raven's heart that was about to fly out also shrank back, and the cold sweat on his back just now made it rain. The huge head of the strangle golem nodded, and the long robe twisted into a text, "Understood, you are indeed the special envoy sent by the master. I will add a pass for you. I will also accept it before an hourglass. When Lord Ludi's notification arrives, he has just entered the tunnel with Lord Fakalan and his entourage. You can choose to wait for him here or enter the tunnel to meet him. This is a difficult decision. The strangling golem is quite intelligent. If Raven ambushed the Black Eclipse Church and his party in the tunnel as originally planned, he would not be able to get out from here. If you come out with a dagger stained with the blood of the sacrificial Black Eclipse, you will definitely be attacked by the strangling golem. Leaving from the entrance of the Golden City, he may encounter a mercenary group chasing the sacrifice, which means danger and trouble. If he didn't go in, then Raven would not be sure to ambush a group of maddened enemies trying to escape in the open terrain. How to do?